I'm Dr. Ebony Williams. I am CEO and founder of Advanced Integrative Services, and my organization provides cultural competency and culturally informed services for the various counties throughout the state of California. We are focused on inclusive practices, diversity, equity, and inclusion, cultural responsiveness, and social justice. I am also an assistant professor at California State University, Sacramento, for the Marriage, Couples, and Family Counseling Program. I think it's important that when we talk about mental wellness in the Black community, we understand that there are several terms that I think that are important to understand. There's mental wellness, there's mental health, there's mental illness, and then there's mental well-being. And in order to decrease the stigma around mental health and mental illness and what those differences are, conversation is definitely necessary, and education is definitely necessary. But before we go into those pieces, it's important to understand that mental wellness really is about how you handle everyday stress, about feeling whole, your overall functioning. So our mental wellness is about feeling good, how we're feeling overall. Our mental well-being is really about how we cope with stress and how we cope with stress in spite of, and how we continue to flourish. And so mental wellness and mental well-being kind of go hand in hand, because it's about being able to handle stress, and in those times of handling stress, still being able to feel whole, supported, resourceful. There's a certain balance in your life. You're able to function in all of the areas that are important or considered important to you and your family and your culture, and your resilience and how you cope with things when we'd have those not so good days, or when things aren't necessarily going the way that we planned. And then if we think about mental health, we're really talking about our overall being, our psychological being, our emotional being, how we interact with others. And it's also a gauge on how we handle our stress as well. And then if we're thinking about mental health, that's mental health, right? Our overall psychological, emotional, and interpersonal being. Then if we think about mental illness, that's when we go more into the clinical aspects. When we're talking about mental health disorders, ways in which you used to cope no longer work for a particular stressor or trauma. So that when those areas of functioning that you were able to maintain, when some of those kind of fall off a bit, when your routine has been disrupted, or if something has happened in your life that has been traumatized and is impacting your everyday way of being, then we're moving more into those aspects of potential various mental illness. Now, mental illness, again, is when the ways in which we cope no longer necessarily work as before. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a diagnosis that is necessary, but it may mean that you may need to talk to someone or find resources, a support system, to be able to talk about the many different stressors that go on for us day to day, especially as Black people, and especially in the climate that we're living in right now. So when we talk about mental well-being, I would hope that with the way that these have been dissected, it gives us a better understanding, excuse me, of what mental health is, of what mental illness is, helps to destigmatize these particular terms and these various experiences, and hopefully increases our motivations to seek resources or support if we need it. According to the 2010 census for Fresno County, Black people make up 4.8% of the population. So that's at that time, it was 44,662 individuals. And if we're thinking about behavioral health, or in this case, with this particular stat, if we're thinking about substance use resources, according to the research, only 187 individuals use those resources. And if we're thinking about from 2020, if we jump forward to now, 2020, and we're thinking about mental health services overall, and of course, we have to keep in mind that we are in a pandemic and COVID has definitely impacted individuals' attendance. For year 2020, there were 24,758 individuals, Black individuals, who were participating in mental health services. But overall, there were 24,758 individuals who were attending mental health services. And out of those 24,758, only 10.7% of those individuals were Black. So I would say that we definitely have to have more conversation around what mental health is, the importance around maintaining mental health, understanding what mental illness may look like, some of its etiology, where it originates. There needs to definitely be conversation around these particular areas in order to normalize or destigmatize mental illness. For us as a Black community, the way that we can normalize and prioritize mental wellness is to have conversations around, first of all, that mental health and mental well-being and mental illness is real. It can affect everyone. It doesn't matter your age range. It doesn't necessarily matter about your current situation. It could be some things from the past that come up for you. There could be repeat traumas that have gone on for the individual or family or community. And we need to talk about also our own experiences if we have participated in individual or group therapies, and talk about the successes or the things that we've learned, and to continue to promote the importance around finding someone to talk to. And within our community, I won't generalize, but for most of us, we are heavily rooted in the church. And I would say if there are individuals who would say that they'd rather speak to a member of the church or another trusted member in the community, I would hope that they would ensure that these individuals were properly trained and or certified in order to provide those services. I would also hope and encourage our faith leadership to discuss mental health and mental illness, and to talk about where there are proper resources that can be researched and had within our communities, because our churches have been the bedrock and foundations of our communities. And they will be definitely a great platform and ally in regards to working with behavioral health services, mental health services, and our communities. So I believe the way in which we can do that is, again, to have the conversations with each other, to have the conversations with trusted individuals. And yet there's still one piece that is definitely important. If we are, as a community, if we're going to be active in educating and advocating that members, our family members and other members of our community seek services, the services in turn have to be culturally informed by policy and practice in order to be truly effective for working with the Black community. So that means that the individual or the organization, excuse me, have to be in tune with our history in this country, our legitimate lack of trust with various systems in this country based on history and current and present day, feelings of not being heard or being dismissed. The resources or these spaces in which we would encourage our people to go. They need to be well steeped in our history, understand current issues, be able to speak to systemic racism, sexism, heterosexism, industrial racism, lack of resources in certain areas, gun violence, interactions with law enforcement. So there are a few things that have to happen if we're going to have these conversations and invite our community members to various agencies who provide mental health services, encourage mental wellness. They have to be steeped in understanding our history and being culturally informed around what has happened for us in our past, what is happening currently, how we are being impacted on so many different levels, how intersectionality plays a huge part in what's going on in many of our lives. And I think that that's really, really important. And another piece that I would say is, in order to normalize and prioritize mental well-being, we have to really think of it just as important as physical health. I would venture to say that it's just as important, if not more, because our thoughts guide or navigate our decisions, our behaviors, our interactions with others, our perspectives, our ability to adjust our perspectives, our ability to engage appropriately with each other. And if things are amiss with the ways in which we are processing thought, then it's going to be that much harder to move forward. Other places in which we congregate and find respite, and two in particular are our barbershops, our beauty salons, spaces in which we, talk about issues and things that are specific to the Black experience. And I believe that if we were to go into our communities, especially our spaces, excuse me, of self-care, i.e. our barbershops, our beauty salons, and talk to them about the importance of mental well-being and mental health, and ask that they also be advocates and allies in promoting the normalizing of the need for mental health and mental wellness. I also think that those will also be, they would also be very instrumental within our communities around normalizing and prioritizing mental health for our Black communities. Some of my favorite mental wellness activities are meditation, progressive relaxation, long walks and exercise, a lot of holistic types of exercises. Those of us who have health insurance take advantage of that and see what's offered. If you have health insurance and you have gone to the therapist and they have prescribed medication, I would encourage you to take the medication as prescribed. And I would also encourage you to ask as many questions as you need to. If there's some things that you do not necessarily understand or are not comfortable with, that is your right to do so. This should be a collaborative effort if you're working with a mental health professional. So you have every right to voice concerns and to ask questions. For the sake of COVID, I would say safely socialize, if that's through Zoom or various video platforms, or outside safe distances with masks. And another thing that I do in particular, I don't have any social media whatsoever, but for those of us who have social media, please give yourselves a social media break and a news break. I tend to watch the news a lot and become inundated with a lot of the things that are going on with the world, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So I have to give myself a news break and a news cutoff time. So I would suggest that for individuals too. Turn off the social media, turn off the news, take some time with your family, enjoy the little things, take walks,